The cavern shook. A low, sorrowful rumble vibrated through the jagged stone walls, rattling loose fragments of crystal. Kai Anders froze, heart hammering. He had tracked legends of the Dragon King for months, and now, standing at the edge of the shadowed abyss, he could feel the creature's presence before he even saw it. The air was thick with a bitter metallic scent, and something else, something almost alive, floated in shimmering motes around him, glowing faintly blue like dying stars. From the darkness came a slow, mournful exhale. Kai's stomach tightened. The Dragon King wasn't angry. It wasn't hunting. It was starving. Centuries of hunger had hollowed out the creature, yet its eyes still burned with an intelligence that made Kai's pulse spike. He swallowed hard. One wrong step here and he could become another tale of humans lost to dragonkind. Kai tightened the straps on his utility belt and checked the small pot slung over his shoulder. Inside was the only weapon he dared bring, a soup made from rare alien herbs and the few vegetables he had risked days to collect. If the Dragon King refused it, there would be no second chance. If it accepted, maybe, just maybe, he could save a life thought lost to legend. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate. Every footfall echoed like thunder in the cavern. The glowing spores swirled around him, almost nudging him forward or warning him to stop. He had no way to tell. He could only trust instinct. The Dragon King shifted. Kai felt the ground tremble as massive claws scraped across stone. A gust of hot, scented air hit him, carrying the faint aroma of decay and something older, memories Kai could not name. The creature's gaze fell upon him, piercing, wary yet curious. Kai's fingers brushed the lid of the pot. "Please," he whispered, voice barely audible, "just try it." A growl rumbled deep in the cavern. Rocks rattled from the ceiling. Kai ducked instinctively as a shard clattered near his feet. The Dragon King lowered its enormous head, eyes flicking to the pot. One slow, deliberate inhale. Kai froze, muscles locked, heart thundering. If it rejected him, if it attacked, he was finished. But then, something unexpected happened. The Dragon King's tongue flicked out, tasting the air around the pot. Its nostrils flared. Kai dared a tiny step closer, setting the pot down on a flat rock. Steam curled into the cold air. The glow of the spores intensified, wrapping around the soup like delicate fingers, and for the first time, Kai saw the Dragon King's pupils widen. Curiosity. Recognition. Something almost human. Kai's lips curved in a silent, nervous smile. He crouched a little, not too close, and whispered, "It's safe. I won't hurt you." The Dragon King tilted its head. The movement was cautious, deliberate. It lowered a claw, massive and clawed, close enough to crush the pot in a heartbeat. Kai held his breath. Then came a tiny, almost imperceptible shift. The Dragon King sniffed again. A single droplet of saliva fell into the soup. Kai's chest loosened. That was more than he had dared hope for. That was progress. He could see it. Centuries of grief, isolation, and hunger were flickering in the dragon's eyes. And maybe, just maybe, something inside him remembered taste. The cavern's silence stretched, heavy with suspense. Kai's mind raced. What would happen next? Would it retreat? Strike? Or, impossibly, accept the offering? Every second counted. He could feel the weight of history pressing down, the legacy of dragons and humans intertwined in a fragile balance. One wrong choice and he would shatter it all. Then a sound cut through the stillness. Not the growl he had expected, not the scrape of claws, but a soft, almost human sigh. It echoed like a melody in the cavern. Kai froze, staring. The Dragon King's massive head lowered closer, nostrils brushing the steam from the soup. Its eyes glimmered with something Kai couldn't name, longing, memory, and hope. A sudden tremor shook the cavern floor. Dust rained from the ceiling. The Dragon King flinched, claws skittering across stone. Kai's heart jumped. He realized with a sinking sense of dread, they were not alone. Something, or someone, had entered the cavern. The soft sigh of recognition vanished into tense, careful silence. Kai's fingers itched toward the pot, unsure if he should grab it or stay still. The glowing spores surged upward, forming erratic patterns around them both. They seemed almost alive, almost protective. The Dragon King's eyes followed the shapes, flicking nervously toward the cavern mouth. And then a shadow moved. Not the dragons. Not the humans. Something massive, deliberate, and unseen. Kai's blood froze. Whatever it was, it had come for the Dragon King, or perhaps for him. He held his breath. One wrong move now could mean instant death. But Kai had come this far. One human, armed only with courage, wits, and a pot of soup, stood in the heart of a legend. The Dragon King's gaze snapped to the cavern mouth, nostrils flaring, claws digging into stone. A low, resonant growl began, rising from a mournful tone to something more dangerous. Warning or challenge, Kai couldn't tell. The glowing spores spiraled violently, forming shapes that looked almost like miniature dragons circling the two of them. Kai's mind raced. The choice was his. Step forward or step back. Move, and risk everything. Stay and risk nothing. But he couldn't stay. Not now. The cavern held its breath, and in that suspended moment, Kai realized that centuries of history, grief and silence were about to collide, and only one human could tip the balance. Then from the shadowed mouth of the cavern, a sharp crack echoed. Something massive stirred. And Kai knew the next moment would change everything. Kai's chest heaved as he crouched behind the rock, eyes fixed on the cavern mouth. Shadows shifted in the flickering light, and he could just make out the jagged silhouettes of the intruders, hunters, armed and determined, moving silently but with lethal intent. The Dragon King's low growl rolled through the cavern like distant thunder, warning the intruders even before he could see them clearly. Kai's mind raced. He didn't have weapons powerful enough to face trained dragon hunters. He only had his instincts, the pot of soup, and a knowledge of alien biology most humans would never dream of. Every second he wasted would cost both his life and the dragon's. He slid a hand over the pot. Steam curled into the air, carrying the rich scent of herbs, vegetables, and a hint of something more. Something he had added secretly, an ingredient known to trigger recognition in dragon olfactory senses. He had hoped it might stir curiosity or memory, and so far it had. The Dragon King had leaned closer, sniffing, tasting the aroma. Now, with hunters invading, Kai had to act fast. A loose crystal above them trembled. Dust and tiny shards fell like rain. The Dragon King's massive tail lashed instinctively, sending pebbles flying toward the intruders. One of the hunters stumbled. That was enough to buy Kai a moment. He leapt from behind the rock, carrying the soup toward the Dragon King, and shouted, "It's safe. You have to trust me." The Dragon King froze, eyes narrowing at the sound of Kai's voice. Then, in a single fluid motion, he swept the pot closer with one claw, careful not to crush it. Steam rose in twisting spirals, mingling with the strange, glowing spores that had begun orbiting Kai in frantic patterns. The spores pulsed as if alive, responding to both dragon and human, forming shapes that hinted at wings, claws, and something older than memory itself. Kai set the pot on the ground in front of the Dragon King. He spoke softly, "I've come a long way. I've studied your kind, your senses, your needs. This is for you, not for them." The dragon's nostrils flared, inhaling deeply, and then it recoiled slightly. The hunters murmured among themselves, thinking the creature would turn on Kai, but it did not. It sniffed again, slower this time, almost deliberating. The first taste was cautious. The Dragon King lowered its massive head and dipped its tongue into the steaming liquid. Steam hissed as it touched the dragon's scales, and for a heartbeat, everything seemed frozen. Then came the subtle, almost imperceptible twitch of its jaw. Kai's stomach clenched. Was it enjoying it, or rejecting it? A sudden shout echoed from the cavern mouth. One of the hunters had ventured closer, perhaps hoping to catch the Dragon King off guard. The creature's eyes snapped to the threat, pupils narrowing. Its tail lashed, smashing a jagged crystal to the ground. The sound ricocheted, startling both hunter and human. Kai's heart raced, but he did not flinch. He had predicted this moment. With careful, deliberate movements, Kai reached into his pack and pulled out small vials containing crushed bioluminescent spores, harmless, but blinding if thrown into the air. He tossed one toward the hunters, and a sudden flash of green light erupted. They yelped, blinking, unable to see. The Dragon King, unnerved by the sudden chaos but instinctively protective, raised its wings slightly, creating a shadowed barrier between itself and the intruders. Kai exhaled silently. His plan was working. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to buy time for the Dragon King to taste the soup fully. The creature lowered its head again, this time with more confidence. Its massive tongue slurped at the mixture, and then, in a sound that shook the cavern walls, it let out a low, resonant rumble that was almost a purr. Kai froze, eyes wide. That was the sound of recognition, curiosity, and, most importantly, acceptance. For a brief moment, the hunters froze too, caught off guard by the sheer power and presence of the Dragon King. Kai knew he had a small window. He spoke again, soft but firm, "It's safe. Taste it. Remember life, not just survival." The Dragon King's eyes flickered at him, golden and ancient, and then returned to the pot. Another taste. This time, it lingered, chewing slowly, deliberately, as if savoring a memory long buried. Kai felt a surge of relief, but he did not relax. The hunters were regrouping, whispering about traps and nets. He had to keep their attention away. He scanned the cavern walls, eyes settling on hanging crystals and stalagmites. He whispered a plan to himself and began tossing small, harmless rocks in precise arcs. The sounds ricocheted, creating confusion, making the hunters hesitate. The Dragon King, sensing Kai's intention, followed suit with a low stomp, amplifying the noise. Together, human and dragon created a symphony of chaos that kept the hunters at bay. Another taste from the soup brought a deeper, almost human-like sigh from the Dragon King. Kai's chest tightened. He had achieved more than survival, he had sparked emotion. Curiosity. Hunger. Life. He realized then that centuries of isolation and despair were breaking, if only slightly, because one human had dared to act with courage, knowledge, and empathy. But the cave tremor returned, stronger this time, and dust fell like rain. The hunters were not done. One of them had moved around the side, invisible in the shadows. Kai noticed the faint glint of a blade catching the spore light. Time snapped back into immediate danger. The Dragon King's tail lashed again, scattering more rock and dust. The hunter froze, and the creature's roar echoed so powerfully it made the air shimmer. Kai's hand hovered near the pot. He realized that one wrong move, one hesitation, and the Dragon King, or he, could be struck down. Then, without warning, the glowing spores surged upward, forming a spinning, blinding vortex around the Dragon King and Kai. It wasn't just light, it was intelligence, awareness, something Kai could feel in his chest. The hunters froze, shielding their eyes. The Dragon King roared, more in shock than anger, and Kai's heart skipped a beat. He knew, in that instant, that the next few seconds would decide everything. Would the Dragon King defend him fully? Would the hunters retreat, or would the fight come crashing into them? And beneath it all, a single thought burned through Kai's mind: the soup had worked. But what came next? Kai's lungs burned as he crouched behind the jagged crystal, watching the hunter freeze beneath the blinding spore vortex. The Dragon King's wings arched slightly, the shimmer of scales catching the eerie light as if the ancient creature itself were holding its breath. Kai's mind raced. The soup had worked, had sparked something in the Dragon King, but it was only the beginning. Centuries of hunger, grief, and isolation could not be undone in a single taste. He crept closer, careful to keep his movements slow, deliberate, predictable. The Dragon King's head followed him, eyes flickering with trust and curiosity, but there was still caution there, still centuries of pain buried in amber-colored depths. Kai knew he had to do more than feed it, he had to awaken memory, emotion, and hope in a being that had forgotten both. He spoke softly, "You remember something, don't you? The taste, the smell, it means something." His voice trembled, but only slightly. Fear was always there, but determination burned stronger. He reached into his pack and pulled out a vial of concentrated bioluminescent nectar, harvested from alien flora known to trigger sensory memory in dragon olfactory systems. One drop could evoke memories buried for centuries. One drop could awaken something impossible. Kai carefully sprinkled a tiny bit into the soup. Steam hissed and twisted like smoke spirits, curling upward and mingling with the glowing spores. The Dragon King's nostrils flared. Its tail lashed, sending shards of crystal skittering, but it did not retreat. Instead, it lowered its massive head closer, tongue flicking in the air. Then came the first sign, a trembling of the jaw, subtle but unmistakable. The creature was remembering. Images flashed through Kai's mind: the Dragon King in a sunlit sky, flying with another of its kind, laughter in the wind, warmth and companionship. The soup, scented with the nectar, carried that memory into the cavern. Kai's pulse raced. He had triggered recognition, emotional memory long dormant, stirring beneath the hunger and grief. But before he could react further, a sudden snap echoed from the cavern mouth. The hunter who had moved unseen stepped forward again, net poised to strike. The Dragon King's ears twitched, nostrils flaring. Kai knew that if the hunter reached close, it could provoke instinctive violence, and the Dragon King, despite the faint trust growing between them, was still a centuries-old predator with claws that could crush a human instantly. Kai acted. He grabbed a shard of crystal from the floor, sharp and jagged, and hurled it at the cavern wall, creating a loud crash. Dust and tiny rock fragments rained down. The hunter yelped, turning just long enough for the Dragon King to snap its massive head toward him. The roar was low, vibrating through Kai's chest, powerful enough to stagger the hunter. Kai didn't pause. He dashed to the pot, holding it firmly, and spoke again, "Taste it. Remember life, not fear." The Dragon King obeyed, lowering its enormous jaws and lapping at the soup with more focus than ever before. Each sip brought more recognition, memories of joy, companionship, and shared experiences long ago. Its golden eyes glimmered with emotions Kai had only glimpsed: longing, sadness, and astonishingly, gratitude. The hunters regrouped, whispering furiously, clearly realizing brute force would not work. Kai noticed a glint in the far shadows. One of them was reaching for a flare, something to blind or burn. Time was slipping. He could feel the pressure mounting. Hesitation here would mean death, either for him, the Dragon King, or both. Kai whispered to himself, heart pounding, "I need to buy time, one more step." He surveyed the cavern walls and remembered the peculiar pattern of the crystals. Many were hollow, resonant. A calculated kick could create a sound loud enough to startle the hunters without harming anyone. He aimed carefully, kicked a crystal, and a ringing clang reverberated, echoing through the entire cavern. The hunters stumbled, blinded by the light of the spore vortex and the ringing sound. The Dragon King's head lifted, nostrils twitching. Its roar grew louder, more resonant, shaking the dust from the ceiling. Kai could see it now. Emotion was overtaking instinct. Its tail lashed deliberately, not out of aggression, but to protect. Its eyes found Kai's, and for the first time there was trust. It recognized him not as a threat, but as an ally. Kai's chest rose and fell rapidly. He had done it. He had awakened centuries of memory in a creature thought beyond hope. The soup, the nectar, his courage and quick thinking. It had worked. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. The hunters were still there, regrouping in the shadows, whispering urgently, trying to understand how a human had gained control of a creature even they considered untouchable. Kai's eyes flicked toward the glowing spores. They swirled faster now, coalescing into shapes, tiny dragons, wings spread, circling him and the Dragon King. It was as if the cavern itself, or something far older, was acknowledging the bond forming between human and dragon. Kai didn't understand it fully, but he knew one thing: this was bigger than survival. It was a connection that might change everything. A louder crack sounded from deeper in the cavern, a fissure splitting through stone. Dust and small rocks cascaded down, and the hunters froze again. But the fissure also revealed something Kai had not noticed. Deep in the darkness, beyond the Dragon King, lay symbols carved into the walls, glowing faintly. Ancient, alien, unmistakably tied to dragonkind, and far older than any human record. Kai's pulse quickened. He realized that the Dragon King's hunger, the soup, the memory, it was all part of something far larger. Something he had only begun to uncover. The Dragon King growled softly, almost a question, and Kai nodded. "I see it too," he whispered. "We're only just beginning." And then, from the shadows, a subtle movement, a flicker of metal, a ripple of shadow, suggested that the hunters were preparing another attack. The cavern trembled again, not from the dragon, not from the humans, but from something waiting. Kai tightened his grip on the pot. The next few moments would decide everything. The Dragon King had remembered, but the danger was far from over. And somewhere in the shadows, something unseen watched, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Kai's heart thundered as he scanned the cavern. The hunters were no longer just shadows. They had split into two groups, flanking the Dragon King. One moved along the jagged walls, blades gleaming in the glow of the spores. The other crept through the dust-filled floor, nets in hand, ready to ensnare the creature. The Dragon King's wings were spread wide now, tail lashing, claws digging into the stone, every muscle taut with tension. But even its immense power wasn't enough against multiple human-trained intruders. Kai swallowed his fear. There was no time to hesitate. One human, armed only with intelligence, courage, and a pot of soup, had to outthink trained hunters and a centuries-old predator's instincts. He grabbed a vial of crushed bioluminescent spores, shaking it lightly in his hand. The particles would ignite a blinding flash if thrown into the air. It wasn't lethal. He didn't want to hurt anyone, but it could buy precious seconds. He whispered to the Dragon King, "Trust me. We do this together." The dragon's eyes met his, golden and ancient, a flicker of understanding passing between them. Kai ran toward the center of the cavern and flung the vial high. The spores erupted in a dazzling green light, spinning like a miniature storm. Hunters yelped, stumbling, shielding their eyes. The Dragon King roared, a low, resonant vibration that shook the cavern floor. Dust cascaded from the ceiling and loose rocks tumbled around them. Kai didn't pause. He darted to the soup pot and lifted it high, the fragrant steam curling around him like a protective veil. "Taste, remember, survive," he shouted. The Dragon King leaned forward, jaws parting carefully, and slurped at the soup. Steam hissed across its scales, but it did not recoil. Its tail lashed with precision now, sweeping rocks toward the hunters, knocking weapons from their hands. Kai realized the creature had shifted, from grief-stricken predator to cooperative guardian. The hunters recovered quickly. One lunged, blade raised, toward the Dragon King's flank. Kai acted instantly. He hurled a jagged crystal, striking the hunter's weapon arm and sending it clattering across the cavern floor. The dragon pivoted, sweeping a massive wing, creating a shadowed barrier. Its eyes flicked toward Kai, almost protective. Kai knew it was waiting for him to act again. He had one more trick. He reached into his pack and pulled out small pods of alien nectar, carefully fermented to release a pungent aroma that dragons found irresistible. Timing was critical. He smashed them against a rock near the hunter's flank. A wave of fragrance swept through the cavern, disorienting them further. The Dragon King inhaled the scent, lowering its head closer to Kai and the soup. Another sip, longer this time. Its rumble turned from confusion to satisfaction, almost purring, a sound no human had heard in centuries. The hunters paused, caught between fear and strategy. They had expected brute force, maybe fire or claws, but not this. A human had allied with a Dragon King. The very idea shattered their confidence. Kai seized the moment. He shouted, "Now! Back off or you face it alone." The Dragon King responded instantly, massive wings beating, dust and light swirling, creating a moving barrier that separated Kai from the hunters. One hunter tried to throw a net, but the dragon's tail swept across, tangling the rope around a jagged crystal instead. Another attempted a strike, but a well-timed flick of the Dragon King's head deflected the blow harmlessly. Kai's calculations had worked. The hunters could not advance without risking themselves against the creature they sought to capture. Kai's chest heaved with adrenaline. For the first time he saw the dragon fully engaged, alert but calm, no longer ruled by despair or centuries of self-imposed hunger. He realized the soup, the nectar, the careful gestures. They had not only awakened memory but had restored purpose. The Dragon King was alive in every sense now. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. From deep within the cavern, a fissure opened suddenly, wider than before. Dust and tiny shards fell like rain. The Dragon King growled, massive claws scrabbling for purchase. The hunters froze, unsure if this was part of the humans' plan or the cavern itself rebelling. Kai's eyes widened. This was something new. Something older than either of them. Through the fissure, faint symbols glowed, a pale alien light forming intricate patterns Kai had never seen. The dragon's eyes widened. Recognition, not just curiosity, flashed there. It tilted its head, nostrils flaring, sensing the same ancient intelligence Kai felt in his chest. Whatever had carved those symbols had been here long before humans, long before dragons. Kai understood instinctively. The Dragon King's hunger, its memories, the spores, they were all connected to something vast, a secret waiting to be uncovered. The hunters, oblivious to this new revelation, stepped forward again, ready to strike. Kai's fingers brushed the edge of the soup pot. The Dragon King's massive claws twitched, wings spread further, a shield of scales and muscle ready to defend him. But Kai knew raw strength alone would not end this. He needed timing, precision, and courage, traits humans could wield in ways even dragons could not anticipate. He whispered again, steadying himself, "Trust me, we end this together." The Dragon King's growl shifted, a vibration of acknowledgement. They were partners now, bound by instinct, trust, and a shared moment of survival. The hunters lunged and the cavern erupted. Dust, spores, and fragments of crystal flew as Kai ran alongside the Dragon King, dodging debris, using every ounce of his knowledge to manipulate the environment. One hunter tripped over a crystal, another was caught in a falling stalactite. The Dragon King's roar echoed, reverberating through the cavern, shaking loose more rock and sending the hunters retreating in fear. Kai ducked, heart pounding, soup pot clutched to his chest. The Dragon King stood over him, wings raised, tail sweeping, eyes fierce but protective. In that instant, Kai realized something extraordinary. A single human's courage, intelligence, and empathy had not only saved himself but had restored the will to live to a creature older than memory itself. And then, as the dust settled, the glowing symbols behind the Dragon King pulsed brighter. The cavern seemed to breathe around them, alive with possibilities. Kai glanced at the Dragon King. He could sense it thinking, wondering, awakening. But beyond the immediate victory there was something else, something waiting. Kai tightened his grip on the pot, whispered softly, "This is only the beginning." From the shadows, an almost imperceptible stir suggested the hunters had not given up. Beyond that, the symbols hinted at a mystery far older than dragons, one that even the Dragon King had yet to understand. The cavern held its breath. And Kai knew that the real test, the true challenge, was only just beginning. Kai sank to one knee, his chest heaving, sweat stinging his eyes. The cavern was still but alive, echoing with the Dragon King's soft rumble, the glimmer of glowing spores, and the shifting dust from shattered crystals. The hunters were gone, retreating into the shadows, not daring to challenge a dragon fully awakened and aligned with a human. Kai allowed himself a small exhale, though every muscle remained tense. One misstep could undo everything. The Dragon King lowered its massive head, nostrils flaring as it inhaled the aroma of the soup. Steam curled around its snout, and it lapped at the mixture with deliberate care. Kai watched, amazed. The creature's golden eyes flickered, emotion flowing through them. Curiosity, recognition, and something more profound, relief. Kai realized with a pang of awe that he had done what centuries of dragonkind and legend could not. He had awakened life in a creature thought lost to grief and hunger. "You're alive," he whispered, voice trembling. Not from fear but from the enormity of the moment. The Dragon King's tail curled slightly around him, not threatening but protective, a gesture of trust Kai would never have imagined possible. He ran a hand along the dragon's snout, careful not to startle it. The scales were surprisingly warm, alive with energy that belied its massive frame. The glowing spores swirled above them, reacting to the dragon's movements, forming patterns that reminded Kai of tiny dragons in flight. He realized slowly that these spores were not just environmental anomalies, they were intelligence signaling something deeper. Perhaps the Dragon King was connected to them, perhaps he always had been. But what they communicated, Kai could not yet understand. He only knew one thing: humans and dragons for the first time in centuries were allies. Kai glanced around the cavern. Beyond the Dragon King, the fissure that had opened earlier revealed alien symbols etched deep into stone walls. Pale light shimmered over the carvings, glowing softly like a heartbeat. He took a cautious step forward, noting the intricate patterns. Dragons, stars, constellations, unknown scripts that seemed almost alive. He knelt to trace one of the carvings with a gloved finger. It pulsed faintly, and Kai felt an odd vibration in his chest, a hum that resonated with his heartbeat. The Dragon King shifted closer, watching. Its golden eyes reflected the carvings, and Kai thought he saw recognition there, as if the creature remembered something buried in its past, or was sensing a truth humans could barely comprehend. For a moment, centuries of sorrow lifted from the dragon, replaced by curiosity and wonder. Kai's heart swelled. This was more than victory. This was awakening. He carefully lifted the empty soup pot. "It's over," he said softly. "For now." The Dragon King lowered its massive head, nudging him gently with its snout, a silent acknowledgement of partnership. Kai smiled faintly, the weight of tension finally easing from his shoulders. He had survived, and more importantly, he had succeeded where no one thought possible, restoring hope to the Dragon King. Kai sat back against a rock, letting the Dragon King's warmth wash over him. He realized something incredible. Humans, even fragile and small compared to mythic beasts, could inspire courage, trust, and change in creatures far older and stronger than themselves. Intelligence, empathy, and determination were as powerful as claws and wings. His entire life of study, survival, and careful risk-taking had led to this moment. But even in this calm, tension lingered. The hunters were still out there, possibly regrouping. Worse, the glowing symbols hinted at mysteries far larger than a single cavern or dragon. Kai felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with caution. The Dragon King's hunger was satiated for now, but something deeper, an ancient secret hidden across the galaxy, was awakening. He sensed it in the vibrations of the cave, in the shimmering spores in the dragon's eyes. "Do you understand?" Kai whispered to the Dragon King. "We're not done. This is only the start." The creature's head lowered slightly, eyes meeting his as if agreeing. Its soft rumble reverberated in his chest, almost like a pulse. Kai knew it was communicating more than he could interpret, but he felt the meaning. Together they could face whatever lay ahead. The Dragon King finally stood fully, wings arching majestically. It let out a deep, resonant roar, not of rage but of life. The sound echoed through the cavern, shaking loose a few remaining shards of crystal, and the glowing spores swirled higher, forming patterns that stretched toward the fissure. Kai stepped forward, eyes wide. The symbols pulsed brighter, and faint trails of light led deeper into the cavern, beyond anything he had yet explored. Kai gripped the edge of the soup pot one last time, a smile tugging at his lips. The Dragon King nudged him gently, guiding him toward the glowing paths. He realized then that this adventure was far from over. The soup had sparked life, but the cave, the dragon, the spores, they hinted at something far bigger. A network, a secret world of dragons and knowledge humans had only dreamed of. A soft rumble came from the fissure behind them, and the symbols glimmered like stars awakening. Kai's pulse quickened. Hunters might return, the galaxy held dangers he could not yet imagine, and ancient powers waited to reveal themselves. But for now, a single human had earned the trust of a legendary creature, and together they had turned despair into hope. Kai glanced at the Dragon King. "Are you ready?" he whispered. The creature lowered its massive head and blinked, a subtle gesture of agreement. Its wings lifted, brushing against the cavern ceiling. The air trembled with energy, light, and anticipation. Kai knew one truth above all: humans, even small and fragile, could change the course of legend. Courage, intelligence, and empathy were weapons more powerful than any blade. As they stepped forward toward the glowing fissure, a faint sound echoed from deep within the cavern. A whisper of movement, a flicker of shadow, something alive waiting. Kai tightened his grip on the pot, ready? Whatever came next, he would face it with the Dragon King at his side. The cavern held its breath, and for the first time, Kai felt the weight of history lift. But beyond the fissure, ancient secrets stirred. And the adventure was only beginning.